And hello, my name is Martin, and today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making the second story to our house. We're also going to be talking about organizing our world outliner. Now, up until this point, we've just been sort of adding things to the screen, and for the most part, there's not a lot of stuff up there, so it's pretty easy to track, and if you click on something, you can find it rather quickly. But there are a couple of organizational tools that we can use, folders and groups that we're going to talk about real quick that might make moving things, copying things, and taking advantage of being able to do that in this software and make that a little bit easier to actually do. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is really what I want to do is I sort of want to group like things together, like this house. The subtractive plus the inside box plus the outside box. So I'm going to click on the first one, and I can look at this and I can actually rename this if I want. If you right click on it and you go to edit, I believe the rename function is right there, and there's also the F2, which would be the shortcut to be able to do that. So let's go ahead and name this house. Let's do house underscore first story outside. Or maybe let's do house outside. You're going to find that people like using abbreviations. Sometimes they'll run words together like box brush and leave no spaces. Just depends on how many of these objects you're going to have and how complex you want to get with the name, if it needs to be repetitive for whatever reason. So we're going to say house outside 1. I'm going to click on the one on the inside. That then brings me to this brush right here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hit F2, and I'm going to say house underscore inside. Okay. And now the other thing I've also got is I've got the geometry, the subtractive geometry, and we're going to go ahead and right click on that. And remember, it's edit, rename, or the F2. I'm going to hit backspace to remove the name, and I'm going to call this door underscore sub 1, or you know what, let's call this door 1 underscore sub. This way I know that if I once I put a door, like an actual door here, and have a door frame, I might create a folder and put all of these things together, and it'll be really easy to identify this as door 1, make the frame 1, or door 1 underscore frame, and then door 1 underscore door. And then that way I have a naming system that I'm starting to use. So then that way, as you look at the hundreds of objects that you are eventually going to have in this world outline for an individual level, you'll be able to find things a little bit easier, because instead of everything being called box brush 2, box brush 3, box brush 4, and you come in here, now I can sit there and I can go, okay, I remember calling this door 1. And then I'll be able to basically filter the list and find just the things that I'm actually looking for. Maybe I clicked on something and I accidentally changed its location and it's a sub, and now all of a sudden I can't find it. I could come up here and type in sub for anything that's a subtractive mesh, and boom, all of a sudden now I can find those things. Because if this, it is invisible. If that thing moves out of the way, you're not going to be able to see where it is, and it's going to be impossible to select. So if you have it named correctly, instead of going down every single box that you have, all you have to do is hit go up here, create a filter, write in the word sub, and you're going to be able to find all of your subtractive meshes this way in a list, and then find the one that you're actually looking for. So very, very useful to name your stuff correctly. Incredible time-saving capability that you're going to be able to give yourself. It's like a superpower. Okay, so we have those objects created and renamed. So now what I want to do is essentially what I could do is I could throw these all into a folder, and let me actually do that first. So I'm going to come here and notice that up here next to the search bar where we just were, we do have a folder menu. So if I click on the main menu, and what I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to minimize all the boxes that I can. And I'm going to select this, and that is the first person example map. First person example map is actually the name of the map, and a map is our level. So go figure, right? So if we go back to our content folder, I believe we go into first person, maybe inside character. No, let's see where they're throwing this. First person, not starter content. Wow, first person. You know what? I could just type in map and then follow it back. Oh, you know what? This is probably with our first person map, and that will. Okay, so there we go. So this is what a map would look like if it was an icon. So you have a starter map. We also have the first person example map, which is actually what we're working in currently right now. So I believe if I. Yeah, it's going to be in first person. So first person BP, there it is, maps, and there's the map itself. That's what we were just looking at. So content, first person BP, and map is how we would get to that map. So that's what we're seeing. That's the same thing that we're seeing up here at the top. Inside that map, you're going to have all the folders that is going to hold the content that is going to be inside this level. And from here, once we've minimized everything, we can come down here to the bottom space. And if we, well, really what it is if we have this thing selected and we hit new, because this is the top folder, it should leave one folder even with everything else. And that's essentially what I'm trying to do. So we'll click that. We'll see that it has created that folder. You can see that it's not subjugated or not put in, it's not a folder inside of a folder. It's a folder at the root directory of this map. And let's go ahead and call this house. Okay, so now we have that folder. Now, the thing right now is that that folder is empty. And the reason why I know that folder is empty is because the eyeball is actually closed. So I can, if there is nothing in the folder, that's what it's going to look like. The second we click and drag and move something into that folder, that eyeball will be lit if the object itself was visible. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go and find our door. So that's the door sub. I'm going to grab that and I'm going to literally just left click and drag that into house. And you can see now that this is inside because it's not even with like it was before. It actually has a bit of an indentation. And if I go into house, now I have this little arrow, which allows me to expand and collapse the folder itself. And in there, I can now see what's available. So house inside. So what we just did was we clicked on one thing and dragged it in there. I can hold shift and select multiple objects, grab those and drop them into house. So now if I do that to house and make all of house invisible, that's what we see when, that's what we don't see when house is not visible, right? Okay, so what that's done now is it's made it very convenient for us to make a second level or a second story to this house, because all we have to do now is select house, right click, edit, duplicate. And now we have a secondary version of that house. We have the folder, okay? We have the folder, but all the objects didn't get copied in. So what we want to do now is grab those objects, right click, edit, duplicate. What you really want to do here is grab the first item and just go ahead and click and drag because all the duplicate copies will be selected and they'll be there. Now the cool thing about this is, everything got named 2, so second story, that might work out. And everything is still selected. So what I can do now is I could literally just grab everything, drag it, and bring it up. And now all of a sudden I have my second story. It's a little bit off. So let's go ahead and try to move this into the correct location. Okay, that looks a little better. Now, the other thing that's also happening is this is moving in increments of 10, and it's snapping to the value of moves of, let me see, that's the scaling option. Yeah, so this is the first one here where it's actually making its moves. So let me actually drop this down to moves of 1. Let me see if we can't get this a little cleaner. Again, if you want to zoom in. Okay, we can also. Now, This is where we have the other problem. What I tried to do right there was I tried to grab this object and push it down and make it make it push down into the layer by using the end key like we have before. But because each one of these are separate layers, each one of these vertices sort of changed itself and I got something really wonky. So let me do that again. I'm going to hit end and you can see that the top door kind of like broke through the bottom ceiling and it thinks that that's the, wherever its compass is the base of that floor. So let me hit undo, bring that back up. And at this point, what I want to probably do is I want to group these. So I'm going to select them. And if I right clicked, I would go and I would see groups and there's actually Control G. So that's actually a pretty simple shortcut to remember. So we're going to hit Control G. Now the cool thing about that is that if I deselect and click something else and then come back, well, it didn't actually do it. So let's hit Control G. There we go. Nope. Right click, group. Okay. It's creating a group actor. Let's grab that. And now if I hit end, now we can do this the old-fashioned way. I mean, I can grab the first box, find its location, grab its location, and move it. But having them grouped should have allowed us to be able to see that the problem with it being grouped is that all of the objects together make up this, they have multiple locations, so it's impossible to really sit there and make them move the way that you want them to. So we'll just go back to just getting them lined up this way. By site. Okay, so that worked the way I wanted it to. They're grouped. I hit end, and they move together like a group. Looks like there's a little bit of dysfunction with that, but we'll be able to fix that up in a minute. And actually, I really don't need that doorway, so let me just go ahead and delete that. Oops, I have everything grouped. Yeah, so that's probably not going to be good. So let me right-click on this. Let me do an ungroup. I'm going to select that doorway. And I'm going to hit delete. That should delete my doorway. And now I'm going to select the inside, hold the outside, there it is, inside, hold shift, grab them together. We're going to group them. And I keep getting some wonky stuff. So let's do a couple of layers of undo. So shift, shift. Smooth this up so it's away from everything else. Let's Control G to group it. Okay, let's hit end. So then that way it moves down to the bottom. And okay, I think I've got that now. Okay, cool. So now we have our first floor and our second floor. And if I go into my first floor, the second floor will see that. We go into the first floor, we'll see this. Now, of course, This would be house 1, house 2. We could go ahead and call that, let's say, house rename. Remember that the renaming is an F2, so we'll call this house underscore st1 for story 1. And with the second one, we'll go ahead and name this, we'll hit F2, and we'll call this house underscore st2. Okay, and then we know that that's the second story. Now with these two all moved and having not lost any of the because they were grouped, basically everything was the proportions between the two boxes were kept. So you don't have to worry about the wall thicknesses having changed just a little bit or anything like that. They're both going to be consistent from the first floor to the second floor because the second one was moved as a group. Okay, so now that it's moved and it's grouped, we don't really need it grouped anymore. So I'm going to select both of those and hit Control G again, or right click and go to groups and ungroup. So now I know that they're ungrouped because if I select one, I'm not selecting the other one. And the reason why I'm doing this is so that way I can, again, if I need to, cut that layer out so I can see what's going on. We get that cool interior view thing again. Okay, so with that done, what I want to do now is having one floor sit on top of the other one, we now need to create a geometry from the first floor to the second floor so we can actually create a staircase, or the hole for the staircase. So again, I'm going to grab a geometry. I'm going to grab a box, drag that into the environment. There we go. And I already know, well, actually at this point, I'm not sure exactly what the floor thickness is. So what the way I'm going to figure this out is I'm going to go ahead and take the box and make it a subtractive. So I'm going to go into its brush settings. And let me pull details panel back up. So we're going to go into brush settings and we're going to make this a subtractive. And because it's still selected, I can then go ahead and punch it through the first floor or the second floor into the first floor. So now I can kind of get a general idea for the size of it. And if I want, and probably at this point, I would still want to do it by the brush settings because it's going to allow me to maintain this. It's not going to stretch the inside geometry when it gets made. Or the material that goes in there. So it is the x-axis. Let's go ahead and use this to make that a little bit smaller. And let's move this up. And that's pretty good. Let's make it 70. Okay. Just to have even numbers. And the location, let's make this 580. Perfect. Okay, and so what I've done basically is I've tried to line that up as much as I can with the bottom lip there, so that the bottom of the subtractive, because if not, as soon as I put in my staircase, this subtractive is going to start cutting into the staircase. So I don't want to do that. I want it to cut into the floor, but not the staircase. Now the other thing too, so now that we have the top hole, we'll come back and we'll make some modifications to this once we know where the staircase is actually going to be. So to create this staircase, we're going to scroll down and go into the bottom floor. And you actually have three options for staircase in geometry. You have a curved staircase, a linear staircase, and a spiral staircase. So it's totally up to you how you want to do that. Just make sure that as you do that, your character has enough space to be able to actually walk up the staircase. And then the second concern would be that there is enough of a room for the hole in the staircase to be able to give clearance for the character and that they're able to freely move around. So let's go ahead and grab one of these staircases. I'm going to drop it onto the floor. Let's go ahead and rotate it, let's say 90 degrees. And again, we're using those tools that we've used already. Now, of course, the staircase is not tall enough to be able to reach it. The incline on the steps, let's say, is, let's actually look at the brush tool because we're going to see quite a few things. So we have definitely want to keep it additive. This is the type of thing that it is. It's a linear staircase, and we actually have a thing here called the step length. So if I look at the step length, I can take those same steps and make them a little bit longer, which is kind of cool. I can also shorten them up, but let's make them, let's say, about 40. So there's a little bit of a decent amount of space for an actual foot there. This will vary depending on what you need the staircase for. Maybe you need a really skinny staircase because you don't have a lot of room in the room to be able to make them wider. The other thing we also get is step height. Now, the thing that you have to be careful with step height is that the character itself will have a certain step height that it will be able to naturally move up an inclined thing like this. This is how the character is going to be able to walk, because the difference in the height of here and here, if I just hit the W key and move forward towards this, my character's been programmed to go ahead and use and see this as a step and be able to navigate by going up this. So I don't have to jump each time I get to another level. The character just automatically does that. So if the step height is too much, like let's say 60, that's going to be too high for the character to naturally navigate. So at that point, my character would have to jump, and hopefully my jump height is higher than this, so then I'd be able to jump to the next level. So let's bring that back to something reasonable, like now at any point, if you don't like what you've done, you will have these little things right here that will reset this to whatever it was originally. So if you feel like you've messed up all the way and you want to do something slightly different or bring it back to square one, you can actually grab those and do that. I actually like the step length at 40, so I'm going to do 40 because I have enough space in this to do that. Now the next thing we also have is step width, which would be obviously this direction. The 200 is actually, remember, our character is about 200, so this is going to work pretty well for our character to feel like they're got a pretty narrow staircase, something just wide enough for them to be able to walk through. If we needed this as a wider staircase, we would then, this would be a double wide, right? So this would be 400 as opposed to the original 200. So I'm going to just hit that and go back to the original. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to somewhat line this up with the wall. So then that way, make it look, I guess, a little bit more realistic, because the staircase would be, I guess, attached to the wall. And then the other thing I've also got is the number of steps. So this is what I'm actually going to do. I'm going to increase the number of steps until the height of my staircase matches the floor. So I've made too many steps, and you can see that because it's gone all the way out. So I'm going to bring this back, and I've got roughly... There we go. So I've got roughly about 21 steps that this needs to work there. All right. So now with 21 steps, if we look at that, that's actually going outside the building. So that's not going to work because there's no like a landing space here for the character to be able to walk up. So I'm actually going to have to reduce my step length back to, let's say, 20. Ooh. Okay, back to normal, let's say 30. And there we go. So there's a little bit of space here for my character to walk up. There's another little bit of space here for the landing. So then that way when my character gets to the top, they can turn around and then see what's actually in the space as they walk into the space. Staircase location and which character, the direction the character comes in is always very important, because in this situation, as my character walks up, they're going to have to turn to see what's behind them, as opposed to if the staircase went straight into, let's say, another level or another like a longer hallway up here, they can keep moving forward, which means that their gun is already pointing in, or it's a first-person shooter, right? So their gun would be pointing in that front direction, which would give them the ability to be able to shoot faster, I suppose. So things to take into consideration as you make your staircase and how you want the gameplay to work out with the staircase. Now, what we're going to do is, obviously, if my character tried to walk up this staircase right now, they would bump their head because there's not enough space here. So I'm going to move that back to get the door or the hole into the second floor lined up a little bit better with where the staircase is going to be. I know that the staircase width is 200. So I could go to my units, and my X is 200, so it's the exact width of the staircase. And still not enough room for my character's head to go through. So this is the X-axis there, or the Y-axis, I'm sorry, and I'm going to pull that apart just to make this a little bit wider, and then again move this back so then it's there. Now from here, what we'd probably want to do is a real quick trial run to see if the character could actually go through that. So I'm going to go ahead and push play, and we're going to walk through there. Now what's really cool is that for us as the editor, we could see right through that building, but as soon as we push play, okay, so I definitely have enough headroom. You can see that as my character goes through there, I'm not bumping heads with anything. I can very quickly turn and, shoot into the environment if I need to. I can come, well, there was a little bit of a bump there. Did you see that? So as I came this way, I was moving maybe a little bit too fast, or maybe I hit the space bar and I jumped a little bit. So that's what I mean, is you want to check this and see what happens. Do I fall down? There's a bit of a ledge on the back side, which actually caught me. So let's hit escape. I'm going to grab that interior, and let's move that a little bit closer to the wall. A little bit too far into the wall. And now I've got my lip back. So again, this would probably just be going here, going into location, let's say typing in 360 exactly. Okay, and then we can go 355. Whoops, wrong way. Let's go back 360. And let's see, which direction would that be? That'd be the X. So let's make this negative 640. Okay, pulled us the wrong way. Let's make this negative 650. Let's try negative 650. Okay, getting better. Let's try negative 649. Negative 648. Negative 647. Negative 646. Negative 5. Okay, we're starting to get less of that edge. And at this point, I feel pretty good, pretty confident about that. It's still biting into the wall a little bit right there, but it's not biting into the top half. It's just biting into the floors in between. And at this point, inside that geometry, if I go back to that sandstone material, so I go back and I find, let's say it was in starter content and materials. I think it was down at the bottom as far as the sandstone. There we go. And I can grab that and apply that to a wall, this part of the geometry, in that geometry, and possibly even that little lip that happened right there. Okay, very cool. So now we have a hole that leads into our second floor. We have the ability to be able to look inside. Oh, let's create a window real quick. This is not a very well lit room. So the window would work exactly the same way. We would go and grab another box. We would grab that box, the geometry box, bring it in. We would stick it into the wall. You probably don't need that additional space. Remember that I think 40 was enough for the width. So this is the x-axis. So let's go ahead and make that 40. Okay. Let's stick that into the wall a little bit. Let's go inside the room, so we can kind of measure that up. Again, we're going to make this subtractive. So now we have the hole for the window. Okay, very cool. And let's actually select this and make it visible again. So I'm going to go back to the world outliner and make that to where I can see it, because I want to see how this ends up looking. Okay, very cool. And if you need the window a little bit wider, you hit the subtractive again. You come down here to the brush settings, and you widen up your window. So Z would make it taller, Y I believe would make it a wider window. There we go. Okay, very cool. Now, the other thing with this is that obviously that is a hole that the character could actually fall through if they wanted to. If I took my character and I walked through that, I could actually fall all the way through. So the next thing that we're actually going to do very quickly is, and then this will be the last thing for this tutorial, is we're going to make a window pane for this. So again, I'm going to grab another geometry. I'm going to bring the box inside, and with that geometry, I'm going to make this. Now, remember that the space between these was about 40 or 30. So if I want to make the window pane feel like it's sitting inside this frame, I'm going to have to make this brush a little bit thinner than that, obviously. So let's go to the brush settings. This is the x-axis, so let's make this about 20. So it's a fairly thin. And actually, let's make that a little bit thinner. Let's make it, you know what? Let's make it 10. Okay, so now that we have that, we do actually have the dimensions for the other window. And actually, I think that would probably have been the easier thing to do. So let's actually select this, delete it. I'm going to go back to that subtractive. I'm going to make a copy of this. So we're going to do edit, duplicate. Now in this one, we're going to take it back to an additive. We're going to make the X, let's make that 20. So it's smaller. Now you can see that it's inset, right? And then from there, we're going to make this a window. So there is actually, if you look in the materials folder, remember this is content starter pack, starter contents material, and what we're looking for is glass. So there it is right there. So there's our glass, and I'm going to make that the material. Now the thing about the glass is that it's going to be just one way. If I go back to the outside of the building, this material is still the sandstone. So I'm going to have to grab that glass and actually make it there as well. So what I have now is I have my glass, and I'm going to set that inside the frame for the window. Okay, so let's look around and see what that looks like. Pretty cool. Let's click off of it and just see if it looks like it's a little strange. That might be because we might need to make this just a little bit smaller than the frame. So again, with the window selected, and the way I can check is because that's the one, if I select it, that's got this. It's got the glass material in there. And let's go to the brush settings and let's actually make this. So that's the X. Let's make the Y just a little bit smaller. There we go. And let's make the Z just a little bit smaller. And I think that's kind of what our problem was. There we go. All right, so now we can see the pane, the window pane. And at this point, what I would do is I would very slowly bring it back, not to the point where it went through, because then you're getting the overlapping of the materials, but just enough to where it looks like it's resting on it. Okay. Very nice. So now we got to do that for the other side. Otherwise, we're going to have that hole. So, I'm sorry, it's for the other axis. Now, the cool thing is because this is a copy of the hole, if we get one side right, we should theoretically get the other side right if we have not moved it. Oops, that was already fixed. I'm going to hit undo for that. And this was the y-axis. Okay. So kind of not feeling it all the way. And again, at this point, we could probably slow down the zoom on the camera. And let's see how close we are on the other side. Not very close on the other side. So we could look at the Y. Okay. Then we'll shift it down a little bit. Probably going to speed the camera up to a 2. Okay. Pretty close there. Pretty close there. Again, brush settings. This is the Y. Now the scaling is also going in groups of 25, so if I turn the scaler tool off and I move this way, I should get slightly smoother movement. And then I could also just go in and type certain things. Yeah, and it's pushing through on both sides, but that's very close. Let's make it 8. Okay. Almost there on the other side. Oh. Well, I'm going to sit there and massage this until it gets where it needs to be. Okay, so now we have our window. That was, hopefully I've done the speeding up thing. Okay, so now we have our window pane. The most important thing now is to do a very quick run through. So let's go ahead and push play. And I'm going to run my character over here. I get into the first floor, run up the stairs, and see that I have a window, and just check the outside of that window just to see that it feels okay, that it looks like it's nestled in there correctly, and that nothing looks strange, like it's biting into or cutting into. You might see a little doubling thing like this, but that's not uncommon with glass, to see a bit of a reflection inside of a reflection, but it's not cutting into the building. Okay, very cool. So we have now a functioning second floor, and the ability of our character to very easily run through this building. We can see what's going on, maybe if from a different vantage point, if we were to want to be able to, I guess, look into the building in that window. But we now have the door, and I'm going to do the door later as far as adding the door itself, because we'll do it with the animation lesson. For right now, we just want to be able to very quickly get into the building, move around, get through the staircase without bumping our head, and walk out through the front door and be able to exit and enter the building quickly. Okay, so that's it for this video. What we're going to do in the next video is we're going to take a little bit of time to kind of make this a less boring structure. So we're going to be doing a bit of decorating, but it's going to be with meshes and materials and more geometries, and then we'll start adding static meshes that will start adding things that will make it actually look like a house, like furniture and things like that. So and those will be coming from packs. So again, second floor grouping is very important. Working with your world outliner is incredibly important. Make sure that you name things correctly, so then that way you can find them fast. Remember that we will use the filter tool to be able to find the things that we need quickly. So either put them in a folder that makes sense if you don't want to name every single last thing, but definitely that organization is going to help you so much. And if you do end up naming these, that will definitely pay. It will be to your benefit to do that. And there may be some businesses that require you, like if you go and you work for somebody, they may require you to do that. Okay, so you now understand groups, how to put things in groups, how to take things out of groups, how to create folders, how to put things in folders, how to move objects around in the world outliner, how to create how to use the group to move things, to get them aligned with other things, or move them together and so that you don't lose the relationship between them. And there we go. So I hope you guys got a lot out of this video, and you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.